the last garden. The distress signal came from a planet that shouldn't exist anymore. Terra-class world, dying atmosphere, population declining for 3 centuries. Standard protocol said ignore it. Dead world stayed dead. But Marcus Webb had never been good at following protocol. He stood in the cargo bay of his small transport ship, surrounded by crates of seeds. Thousands of varieties collected from 100 worlds. His life's work, packed in temperature-controlled containers that hummed with preservation fields. Destination in 10 minutes, his ship's AI announced. Warning, atmospheric toxicity at dangerous levels. Recommend immediate departure upon arrival. Marcus checked his environmental suit one more time. The helmet felt heavy. The oxygen tanks felt heavier. But the small cloth bag of earth seeds in his pocket felt heaviest of all. His grandmother had given him those seeds 50 years ago, back when Earth still had gardens, before the corporate wars turned his homeworld into another industrial wasteland. Plant these somewhere that matters, she'd told him with dying breath. Make something beautiful in this ugly universe. He'd been searching for that place ever since. The broken world. The planet was called Thesha 9 in the registry. The natives called it home, though Marcus suspected that word meant something different to them now. The landing was rough. Atmospheric interference, his sensors screamed. Gravitational fluctuations. Chemical storms on the horizon. Everything about this world said leave, run, save yourself. Marcus stayed. The settlement appeared through the toxic haze like a ghost. Crystalline structures, once beautiful, now cracked and fading. Beings moved between buildings, their movements slow, tired. They were tall, slender, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large, dark, filled with the kind of exhaustion that came from centuries of losing. A delegation approached his ship. 5 beings, all female from what his translator indicated. They wore robes that might have been ceremonial once but now just looked worn. The eldest stepped forward. Her skin was pale gray, almost colorless. Her voice came through his translator as a whisper. You are human. Yes. My name is Marcus Webb. I received your distress signal. We sent that signal 200 years ago. Her expression was unreadable. We stopped expecting answers long ago. Marcus looked past her at the settlement, at the dying world beyond. I'm here now. What do you need? Need? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. We need time. We need our world back. We need our men returned from the war that killed them all 3 centuries ago. Her eyes fixed on him. Can you provide any of those things, human? No, Marcus said honestly. But I'm a gardener. And I think I can help your world breathe again. The Council of Elders. They brought him to the Great Hall. 200 women gathered in a space built for thousands. The walls were covered in murals showing a different world, green forests, blue waters, golden fields. A world that existed only in memory now. The Elder Council sat in a semicircle. 12 ancient beings, their skin so pale it was almost transparent. The eldest, the one who'd met him at his ship, spoke for all of them. I am Elder Maressa. You claim to be a gardener. I am a gardener. Our world is dying, Marcus Webb. The soil is poison. The water is acid. The air burns our lungs. Our scientists, the greatest minds of 7 generations, have tried everything. What makes you think you can succeed where they failed? Marcus unsealed his helmet. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His environmental suit screamed warnings. The air was toxic, filled with compounds that would kill most species in minutes. He took a breath. It burned. God, it burned. His eyes watered. His throat felt like fire. But he didn't put the helmet back on. Because, he said, voice raw, I've spent 50 years learning how to grow things in places where nothing should grow. And because sometimes the answer isn't about fighting the poison. It's about finding something that can thrive in it. He pulled out a small container from his suit. Inside, a single seed. Dark, hard, unremarkable. This is a harmony seed. It's been modified, evolved, adapted from a plant that grew on Earth during our toxic age. It doesn't just survive in contaminated soil, it feeds on it. It breaks down the poison and converts it to nutrients. Marissa stood slowly. One seed cannot save a world. No, Marcus agreed. But 10,000 seeds might start the process. 100,000 might give you hope. And 1,000,000? He smiled despite the pain in his lungs. 1,000,000 might give you back your world. He replaced his helmet, his lungs screaming with relief as clean air flooded in. I have 2,000,000 seeds on my ship. Different varieties, different adaptations, each one designed to heal a specific type of damage. I've spent my entire life preparing for this. For a world that needed saving more than it needed judgment. The hall was silent. Then a young voice called out from the crowd. Why? Why would you help us? We are nothing to you. Our world is nothing to you. Marcus found the speaker. A young female, perhaps 20 in their years, her skin still holding hints of color. Blue and green, like the ocean in the murals. Because, he said quietly, my grandmother told me to plant seeds somewhere that matters. And I think this is that place. The first planting. They gave him the Deadlands. A stretch of soil so poisoned that nothing had grown there in 200 years. Perfect, Marcus thought. If it works here, it will work anywhere. He stood at the edge of the wasteland with his equipment, his seeds, and an audience of 50 skeptical aliens. A small child approached him. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, her skin pale yellow like weak sunlight. She stared at his containers with wide, curious eyes. Are those magic? She asked. Marcus knelt down. No, sweetheart. They're science. But sometimes science feels like magic. Will they really make things grow? I hope so. But what if they don't? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he opened his cloth bag and pulled out one of his grandmother's earth seeds. He placed it in the child's small hand. This seed is from my home world. It's 5,000 years old, from a time before humans went to space. My grandmother gave it to me and told me to plant it somewhere beautiful. He closed the child's fingers around it gently. If my seeds don't work, I want you to keep this one safe. Somewhere, someday, someone will find a way to make your world beautiful again. And when they do, plant this seed for me. So a piece of my home can grow in yours. The child nodded solemnly, clutching the seed like a treasure. Marcus stood and began his work. The science of hope. The machinery was old but functional. Marcus had built most of it himself, piece by piece, world by world. Seed dispersal drones, soil analyzers, atmospheric processors. Everything he needed to begin the transformation. He worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, surviving on water and determination. The aliens watched in shifts, silent observers to what they clearly believed was futile effort. On the 4th day, something changed. A young scientist named Kira approached him. Her skin was deep purple, intelligent eyes tracking his every movement. Your seed placement pattern, she said. It's not random. No, Marcus agreed, not looking up from his work. It's based on nutrient flow, water table depth, and atmospheric current patterns. But you're also spacing them according to something else. Something I don't understand. Marcus smiled. Root communication networks. Plants talk to each other through their roots, sharing nutrients and warnings. I'm planting them so they can build a community underground before they ever break the surface. Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she said, That's beautiful. That's nature. We just forgot how to listen to it. May I help? Marcus looked at her, at the hope beginning to kindle in her eyes. I would be honored. By the end of the week, 20 scientists worked alongside him. By the end of the month, 200. The first sprout. It happened on day 43. Marcus was running routine scans when his equipment started screaming alerts. Not warnings, confirmations. He dropped everything and ran to the Deadlands. They were already gathering. Every being in the settlement, 200 women and children, standing at the edge of the wasteland, staring. A single green shoot pushed through the poisoned soil. Tiny. Fragile. Impossible. The child who'd kept his earth seed approached slowly. She knelt beside the sprout, not touching it, just looking. Then she began to cry. "It's the same color as the murals," she whispered. "Green. Real green." Marissa stood beside Marcus. Her ancient hands trembled. "In 300 years, nothing has grown in the Deadlands." "Nothing." "Something's growing now," Marcus said softly. "How long until?" "Years. Decades, maybe. This is just the beginning. The seeds need to establish their networks, break down the toxins, rebuild the soil structure. It's not fast. But it's possible. It's happening." Marissa turned to him, and for the first time, Marcus saw something other than exhaustion in her eyes. He saw hope. "What do you need?" "Resources, workers, anything." "Time," Marcus interrupted gently. "And patience. And maybe some trust that sometimes the slowest solutions are the only ones that last." That night, the settlement held its first celebration in 3 centuries. They sang songs Marcus couldn't understand, in voices that carried harmonies his human ears weren't designed to hear. But he understood the emotion behind them. Joy. Pure, fragile, terrifying joy. The small child found him before the night ended. She held out the earth seed, offering it back. "It's working," she said. "You don't need this anymore." Marcus shook his head. "That seed was always meant for you. When your world is healed, plant it in the most beautiful place you can find. So something from my home can grow in yours." She clutched it again, nodded seriously, and ran back to her mother. Kira approached, her purple skin almost glowing in the moonlight. "They're calling you the miracle worker." Marcus laughed. "I'm not a miracle worker. I'm just a gardener who refused to give up." "Sometimes," Kira said softly, "those are the same thing." Above them, the toxic sky swirled with chemical storms. But beneath their feet, in the poisoned soil, 2 million seeds were beginning their slow, patient work of transformation. The healing had begun. Harvest of miracles. 6 months later. The Deadlands weren't dead anymore. Marcus stood at the observation point, watching the sunrise paint the landscape in colors this world hadn't seen in centuries. Green. Not just one shade but dozens. Emerald shoots, jade leaves, grass the color of new life spreading across soil that had been gray as ash 6 months ago. The harmony seeds had exceeded every projection. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Their roots dug deep, breaking down toxins and converting them to nutrients. Their leaves processed the poisoned air, releasing oxygen in quantities his instruments could barely measure. "It's spreading faster than you predicted," Kira said beside him. She'd become his constant companion, learning everything he could teach her, adding insights from her own scientific background that Marcus would never have discovered alone. "The seeds are communicating better than I hoped," Marcus admitted. "They're sharing resources, supporting the weaker plants, creating a network that's stronger than any individual species could be. Like a community." "Exactly like a community." Movement below caught his attention. Workers, dozens of them, tending the new growth. Not scientists anymore, farmers. Learning to care for the plants, to read their needs, to nurture the fragile new ecosystem. And children. So many children, running between the green shoots, laughing, playing in a landscape that was finally safe enough to touch without protective gear. The small girl who'd kept his earth seed, her name was Lyss, he'd learned, was teaching younger children how to identify different plant species. She took her role as guardian of the original earthseed seriously, and by extension, had appointed herself guardian of all growing things. "Teacher Marcus," she called, waving frantically. Come see. The water plants are flowering. Marcus smiled. He'd stopped correcting the teacher title weeks ago. Coming. The council's request. 3 months into the transformation, Elder Maressa summoned him to a formal council meeting. Marcus arrived to find not just the 12 elders, but representatives from settlements across the planet. News of the Deadlands miracle had spread. Marcus Webb, Maressa began, her voice stronger than he'd ever heard it, you have given us what 3 centuries of our brightest minds could not provide. Hope. Life. A future. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Other settlements are dying, a representative from the Northern Territories said. Her skin was pale blue, fading toward gray. Our water is poisoned. Our children are sick. Can you? Yes, Marcus interrupted. He'd been preparing for this request since the first sprout appeared. But I can't do it alone. And I won't do it the same way. Silence greeted this announcement. Marcus stood, pulling up holographic displays showing the planet's various ecosystems, each one dying in its own unique way. Every region needs different solutions. Desert adaptations, water purification systems, atmospheric processors. I have the knowledge and the seeds. But you have something I don't, you understand this world in ways I never could. He looked at Kira, at the other scientists who'd become his students and teachers both. I want to train you. All of you. Not just to plant my seeds, but to understand the principles behind them. To create your own solutions. To become gardeners of your own world. An elder from the western provinces spoke up, her voice skeptical. You would share this knowledge freely? With no price? The price is already paid, Marcus said quietly. My grandmother died on a world that killed itself through greed and ignorance. She made me promise to plant seeds somewhere that matters. This world matters. These people matter. That's price enough. The Academy. They built it in 6 months. A sprawling complex at the edge of the healing Deadlands, where students could learn theory indoors and practice outdoors. The Academy of Living Sciences, they called it, though everyone simply referred to it as the Garden School. Marcus taught the first class himself. 50 students, ranging from young adults to elders who'd decided they weren't too old to learn something new. Kira served as his assistant instructor, often teaching sections better than he could. The curriculum was simple but comprehensive. Seed biology, soil chemistry, atmospheric science, root communication networks, ecosystem balance. Everything Marcus had spent 50 years learning, compressed into intensive courses that left students exhausted and exhilarated. LYSS attended every class, despite being far too young for formal enrollment. She sat in the back, clutching her earth seed, absorbing everything with the intensity of someone who understood this knowledge was precious. Why do the plants talk to each other? She asked during one lecture. The older students looked embarrassed by the simple question, but Marcus smiled. Because isolation is death. In nature, everything survives through connection. Plants share nutrients with neighbors, warn each other about dangers, support the weak until they're strong enough to support others. Like families, LYSS said. Exactly like families. The first expansion. Year 1 of the transformation. Marcus stood on a transport heading to the Northern Territories with 30 of his best students. They carried seeds, equipment, and knowledge. Most importantly, they carried hope. The northern settlement was worse than the Deadlands had been. The water table was contaminated with heavy metals, the soil was acidic enough to burn unprotected skin, and the atmosphere was thick with sulfur compounds that made breathing painful even with filters. But Marcus had taught his students well. They didn't try to fix everything at once. They started small, water purification plants along the river delta, atmospheric processors in key locations, specialized fungi that could break down heavy metals. Patient, methodical work that would take years to show results. Except it didn't take years. The northern people, desperate for change, threw themselves into the work with an intensity that shocked even Marcus. Farmers became scientists. Children became caretakers. Elders who'd resigned themselves to watching their world die suddenly had reason to fight for its future. 3 months into the northern expansion, Kira pulled Marcus aside. Her expression was troubled. "We have a problem." Marcus's stomach dropped. "The seeds aren't working?" "The opposite. They're working too well." She pulled up data streams. "The growth rate is accelerating. Not just in the north, everywhere. Plants that should take months to mature are doing it in weeks. The root networks are expanding faster than our models predicted. It's like..." She paused, searching for words. "It's like the planet itself is helping." Marcus studied the data, his mind racing. Then he started to laugh. "What's funny?" Kira demanded. "We were so focused on teaching the plants how to survive in this world, we forgot that this world might want to survive too. Thesha 9 isn't fighting the transformation, it's embracing it." "Is that possible? Can a planet want something?" Marcus looked out at the landscape where green shoots pushed through poisoned soil with almost desperate urgency. "I don't know. But I don't think we're just healing this world. I think it's been waiting for someone to show it how to heal itself." The unexpected gift. Year 2. The transformation had spread to 6 major settlements. Atmospheric oxygen levels were rising. Water tables were slowly purifying. Children were being born healthier than they'd been in generations. And then something impossible happened. Marcus was in his laboratory when Kira burst through the door, her skin flashing colors he'd learned meant extreme excitement. "The southern forest," she gasped. "You need to see this. Now." They flew to the southern territories, where one of his first groups of students had been working on reforestation efforts. Marcus expected to see the usual miracle: green growth where there should be none, life returning to dead soil. What he saw made him stop breathing. Trees. Massive trees, towering 30 meters high, with bark that shimmered like oil on water and leaves that pulsed with bioluminescence. Trees that shouldn't exist, that weren't part of his seed collection, that grew in patterns his instruments said were impossible. "They're native species," Kira whispered beside him. "Ancient ones. They've been dormant in the soil for 3 centuries, waiting. Your plants didn't just heal the soil, they woke up the planet's original ecosystem." An elder from the southern settlement approached. She was crying, her skin cycling through every color in the spectrum. "My grandmother told me stories about these trees. The singing trees," she called them. "I thought they were myths. But they're real. They came back." As if responding to her words, the trees began to resonate. Not sound, exactly, but vibration. Harmonics that Marcus could feel in his bones, that made his teeth ache and his heart race. The native people around them fell silent, listening with their whole bodies to a song their world hadn't sung in 300 years. "What are they saying?" Marcus asked quietly. The elder smiled through her tears. "Welcome home. The offer." Year 3. Thesha 9's transformation was complete enough that other worlds started noticing. Delegations arrived from dying planets across the sector, all with the same desperate question: "Can you save us too?" Marcus stood in his office, surrounded by holographic requests. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of settlements, millions of beings who needed what he could provide. He felt the weight of impossible expectations settling on his shoulders. Kira found him there at midnight, staring at the requests with exhausted eyes. "You can't save them all," she said gently. "I know. But you're going to try anyway." Marcus smiled tiredly. "My grandmother would haunt me if I didn't." "Then you'll need help." Kira pulled up a new display. "I've been organizing the academy graduates. They want to form teams, travel to other worlds, share what they've learned. They're calling themselves the Gardener Corps." "That's ridiculous." "That's beautiful. And it's happening whether you approve or not." She fixed him with a stern look. "You taught us that isolation is death. That everything survives through connection. Did you think that lesson only applied to plants?" Marcus looked at the list of volunteers. Hundreds of names. His students, their students, beings who'd learned that dying worlds could be saved and decided they wanted to help save them. How did I get so lucky? He whispered. You listened to your grandmother, Kira said simply. You planted seeds somewhere that matters. We're just making sure those seeds keep spreading. 5 years later. The celebration lasted 3 days. Representatives from 200 worlds gathered on Thessia 9 to witness something unprecedented, a planet officially declared recovered from environmental collapse. The ceremony took place in the Deadlands. Except they weren't Deadlands anymore. They were a forest. A thriving, diverse, impossibly beautiful forest where nothing should have been able to grow. Elder Maressa, still ancient but no longer dying, stood at the center of the celebration. Her skin had regained its color, deep violet with swirls of gold. She looked 10 years younger than when Marcus had first met her. 5 years ago, she announced to the crowd, a human arrived on our dying world with 2 million seeds and a crazy idea. We thought he was a fool. She smiled. We were right. Only a fool would believe that patience and seeds could save a world that 300 years of science couldn't fix. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But sometimes the universe needs fools. Needs people who refuse to accept that death is inevitable. Who look at poisoned soil and see possibility. Who teach us that the answer to isolation is community, and the answer to despair is hope. She turned to Marcus, who stood beside Kira and a now teenage LYSS. Marcus Webb, you came to our world with your grandmother's promise to plant seeds somewhere that matters. You fulfilled that promise. But you did more, you taught us to become gardeners ourselves. To spread that knowledge, that hope, to worlds that needed it as desperately as we did. She held up a seed. Not one of Marcus's harmony seeds. Something else. Something native to Thessia 9, a species that had been extinct for 3 centuries until the planet woke up and brought it back. This is a memory seed. From the singing trees. Our ancestors believed these seeds could only grow in soil that remembered joy. She placed it in Marcus's hand. Plant this somewhere that matters. So a piece of our gratitude can grow wherever you go next. Marcus stared at the seed. It was warm, pulsing with faint bioluminescence. He looked up at the crowd, at Kira, who'd become the director of the Garden Academy, at LYSS, who still carried his grandmother's earth seed and had been accepted as the youngest student ever admitted to the Gardner Corps, at the hundreds of students who'd learned from him and were now teaching others. Thank you, he said simply. But I think my traveling days are done. There are too many worlds that need help, and I'm just one person. So I'm doing what worked here, I'm training others to carry the seeds forward. He looked at LYSS specifically. The next generation of gardeners won't be humans spreading human knowledge. It'll be all of us, sharing what we've learned, adapting it to new challenges, creating solutions we can't even imagine yet. But where will you go? Someone called from the crowd. Marcus smiled, looked at Kira, then at the forest that had once been a wasteland. I'm staying here. This world gave me something I didn't know I was looking for, a home. A family. A reason to stop running and start growing roots. The celebration erupted in cheers. Later, as the twin suns set and the singing trees began their evening chorus, Marcus sat with LYSS at the edge of the forest. She still carried his grandmother's earth seed, protected in a small crystalline case she'd made herself. I've decided where to plant it, she announced. Where? She pointed to the center of the forest, where the oldest singing tree stood. There. Where your first seed grew. So something from your past can grow beside our future. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That's perfect. They walked to the spot together. The earth there was rich, dark, alive, nothing like the poisoned soil that had been here 5 years ago. LYSS knelt and dug a small hole with her bare hands. Do you think your grandmother would be proud? She asked as she placed the ancient earth seed in the soil. Marcus thought about the woman who'd died on a poisoned world, who'd given him a promise that shaped his entire life. Who'd believed that beauty could exist in an ugly universe if someone was brave enough to plant it. Yeah, he said softly. I think she'd be proud. Lyss covered the seed carefully, her young hands gentle and sure. Then she sang, a song in her own language that Marcus didn't understand, but that sounded like hope and gratitude and promise all mixed together. As they walked back toward the settlement, the singing trees joined her song, their harmonics carrying across the healing world. And deep in the soil, 2 million harmony seeds and one ancient earth seed continued their patient work of transformation. Because that's what gardens do. They grow. They connect. They turn poison into life and despair into hope. One seed at a time,